Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to Inspirate Business. We're here to inspire you, to empower you, and to enlighten you. And this is episode 41. We have a very special guest at a time where we're going into what is probably one of the most momentous moments of our country's trajectory. We had our 94 moment when democracy was ushered into South Africa. And with everything that has happened over the last 30 years, 29 years, the next elections is going to be a very, very crucial for the future of South Africa. And we have somebody who has in-depth knowledge and who's doing amazing work. And we're all going to find out about the work that he's doing. Welcome, assalamu alaikum, to the Inspirate Business Show, Brother Ricardo Maarman.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Jazakallah khairan for having me. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. Thank you very much.
Yes, now Ricardo, Raaid will interchange
sure.
the names. And I met very briefly, very recently at a function hosted by the CBE. And, you know, when you connect with somebody and, you know, they call it the soul connection.
Yeah.
And just his ideologies, his thinking, just resonated with what we're trying to do as well in terms of the principles of Inspirate Business. Mm-hmm. And I just felt it's so critical that we need to hear what the challenges we have in South Africa. Yeah. And importantly, and this Islam teaches us, is the opportunities,
yes,
that solutions
mm-hmm.
that are available.
Mm-hmm.
Now, before we go into, you know, what you're doing, you represent Azania as a political party.
Yes, indeed. I represent Azania as a political party, hoping to contest in the 2024 elections and to offer the South African people an alternative perspective, I think, that is missing in the political landscape at the moment.
No, great. So we're going to talk a lot about Azania, what it stands for,
yeah.
what are the challenges in South Africa. But as we do with all our guests, we want to find out a little bit about who is Ricardo, who is Raaid, and your story. So I believe Northern Cape boy.
Eastern Cape.
Eastern Cape.
Yeah.
All right.
Eastern Cape, the Karoo.
Okay.
Raaid. And obviously, as you see with the name Azania, the same town, I don't know, many of your older viewers might remember this name, Robert Sobukwe.
Yes.
So Robert Sobukwe is also a native of Raaid. This is part of my introduction to politics, really, was his death and his funeral. So my mother witnessed the funeral of Robert Sobukwe, I believe in 1978. Now, Raaid is a very small town. But my mother explained to me that at this day, the town was brought to a complete standstill. And my mother was not a political person, but she was now interested in who is this man? Who is this man where people are coming from all over the world to his funeral, to a small town where the water doesn't taste the best and that sort of thing. And so she would recount to me these stories. And when we went to the graveyard to pay our respects to our dearly departed relatives, there you would see the big gravestone of Robert Sobukwe. So that was my awakening to politics. And maybe just before I end there is also to explain, from Raaid as well comes Anton Rupert. So the Rupert family comes from Raaid and well, and they are also a very dominating family for different reasons. So in this small town, you have these two giants, I would say, on different sides of the spectrum.
Polar opposites.
Indeed.
And something that is being challenged in this next elections, because it's all about this, what they call the Ruperts that represent everything that they say is white monopoly capital.
Yeah.
And then there's this aspect of what Robert Sobukwe stood for.
Yes.
And
yes,
the principles of Africanism, of taking destiny into our own hands as a nation, as a continent.
100%. And maybe just to give another important aspect of Raaid as well, Based especially now in the light of what we're seeing happening in Gaza with the Palestinian conflict, with the massacre basically that is happening, that in Graaff-Reinet was a stronghold for the Dutch Reformed Church. And a former apartheid president, I think one of the first apartheid president, the president that was in 1948, D.F. Maarman, he was a preacher in Graaff-Reinet, a Dutch Reformed pastor there. And there was this, basically the doctrine of apartheid that came that said that, the native people of South Africa are sort of cursed. There is a curse on them, a curse that goes all the way back to Noah. And that is the reason why they deserve their status as being oppressed. And that the Afrikaners were sort of the biblical chosen nation. So this all comes from Graaff-Reinet and its history. So that is the environment that I grew up in. And speaking about the church issue, I remember in church, we would all be non-white people in the church, in the Dutch Reformed Church. And our pastor used to be white. And as a child, I was always, I wouldn't listen to the sermon. I was fascinated about what's going on, the dynamic. Where's the rest of the white people? But anyways, this is how I grew up and shaped my understanding.
So talking of the church, I mean, you grew up very strong in the church, right, as a Christian.
Yes.
You have embraced Islam
Yeah. of
how many years ago?
Probably 20 years ago now.
Okay.
And as I say, I grew up in a very strong Dutch Reformed church background. My grandfather was a church elder and played a very important role there, instilled into my mother, deep religious beliefs and the same into me. But how I came to Islam is that my mother instilled something very important in me, a sense for truth. My mother said that you must stand for the truth and you must believe in the truth no matter what it costs you. My mother was very strong in that. And it just so happens that when I then learned that it was not only Christians and Jews that had monotheistic beliefs. Coming from a small town like Graaff-Reinet, didn't expose to a lot of Muslims. When I came to Joburg, I heard there is people, Muslims, who believe also that God is one. And I was then interested in reading the Quran. And when I read the Quran, I found the truth that my mother was speaking about, that I couldn't turn away from.
Yeah, I recall you telling me this was, I think your interest in Islam was just soon after September 11th.
Yes, indeed. It was after the September 11th attacks. This was when, obviously, Islam was brought into the forefront. And it was not something that I took seriously at that stage. So that sparked some of the interest that led me, to search and into the Quran. And I'm a person up to today, I'm interested in the truth. I cannot rest if my mind is in doubt about any matter. I need to get to the bottom of it, and I need to understand what is the truth. And when I do understand the truth, I can't compromise on it. I find it very difficult to compromise on the truth, unfortunately. And in politics, it gets you into some trouble.
Yes, and the truth, I believe, is lacking in our political landscape the world over. I mean, if you look at what's happening on the streets, you spoke about this genocide that's happening in Gaza, but you've seen humanity standing up against injustices, against falsehood. It's truth coming out in numbers. And this is something that's so important.
No, 100%. I mean, it's a fight of truth and falsehood, as you say, basically. And the sad reality is that at the moment, our world is dominated by falsehood. My grandmother used to say, a liar is a thief and a thief is a murderer. And this is what you see. The world is, if the world had more sense of truth or more people that were committed to the truth, we would see less oppression, we would see less exploitation, and we wouldn't see a situation where people can be genocided in broad daylight as we see now. So it is a fight between truth and falsehood. And at the moment, those on the side of truth are very little. The world is dominated by lies and falsehood, unfortunately.
Yes, and this is very, very important, especially also with the advent of technology and social media I mean, there's a programming of sorts to make you believe in something that is the falsehood. And I mean, maybe we can see it a little bit more discerning, but what happens to our children? And so many innocent out there that are just getting duped.
Yeah. No, you make a good point. And I think that's part of the reason why falsehood is succeeding, because falsehood has been institutionalized. That people have been taught falsehood from school level. And you see, the thing is, the moment you come in contact with the truth, like I, for example, when I came into contact with the Quran, it changes the way you perceive the world, and you can see the falsehood everywhere. And it shocks you how people can be trapped in this falsehood. But you realize then we have a system in which lies are taught literally from the cradle to the grave, and in various forms. And in some instances, the truth is made illegal, and people can go to jail for speaking the truth. So this is how falsehood has dominated the world like that. Not necessarily because humanity can't recognize the truth and humanity is evil and steeped in falsehood. No. Evil is organized, and it's found a way to control all of the institutions and structures in society, and it has institutionalized falsehood.
Yes, that very, very powerful note. We've come to the end of this segment. This intriguing conversation with Brother Ricardo Maarman. Immediately after the break, let's explore further. Welcome back to Inspirate Business. On our red hot couch, we have a very important political leader of the political party, Azania. Now, Azania, let's go into Azania. I found some interesting things about Azania. This is the historical term for South Africa.
Yes.
Right? But I believe it has some biblical roots. I believe it has some Islamic roots.
Yes.
Spiritual roots as well.
Yes. As you mentioned, obviously, Azania has all that. So Azania, maybe start with, obviously, it's the first name for this part of the world. I think it actually has Persian roots, with the ancient trade. Many people are not aware of it, but there has been trade between Africa and the rest of the world, including as far as Persia is concerned, for thousands of years. And so this is where the name Azania has come as well from, the land or the country of the black people, of the African people. And then Azania in the Bible, in Hebrew, I think it means that God has listened or he has heard. And then from a Muslim point of view, in Arabic, it comes from the word adhan.
As in the calling.
As the call. So as a call to prayer or as a call somewhere. And where I take this from here is, maybe on the last part to latch on there, that I'm calling to the oppressed people of South Africa to stand together, and for us then together to call to the Almighty to give us the strength and the ability to get out of our oppression. So that is just by the name. In terms of the political ideology, again, going back to my studies of Sobukwe, that I found that I've, part of my political journey now comes from me, being a student of politics, having done research, and I've recently written a book that will be published soon, inshallah, called The Subversion of South Africa. But coming on that point, and I'll just end there on the Sobukwe issue. You see, Sobukwe left the ANC, and his gripe with the ANC then was that the ANC was infiltrated, and the ANC was subverted from the inside. There are people who got into the ANC and steer it in another direction, and he believed then that the ANC will not be able to deliver the promises that it set out to deliver. And I found now in my research and my journey that he was correct, that is the situation and that is the problem.
And I mean, that's what we faced with now all these years later. The narrative is, of course, one, you have a movement that has delivered somewhat. I mean, we have to give credence as well.
Of course, yeah.
But has lost its way.
Yeah.
And fundamentally, and this being a business show, the economy 30 years later into democracy is still in the hands of the 1%.
Yes.
How has this economy transformed, where you talk about the oppressed, right? How have you we have the largest Gini coefficient in the world.
Yes.
I mean, such a few control the majority of the resources of this country. You go and see some of the largest mines, mineral wealth coming out of here, going to cities in Europe, into the rest of the world, and you have abject poverty. I mean, that is an indictment on us as a nation. And so how does Azania's, what are the principles, ethos, models that it would be using to eradicate this challenge?
Yeah. So Azania, from our point of view, politically, we are asking the question, or we're saying that the country should, together with us, ask and focus the question, why has the ANC not delivered on these promises? What was the cause for this, And before we start making new promises, before we promise people houses, land, and all of that, we must ask, the ANC promised the same.
Let's understand the problem.
Yeah, why hasn't the ANC delivered? And as you quite rightly point out, that yes, of course, there's been, we can all say there's problems of corruption or whatever in the ANC, but there's also a majority of people that are good people, that are hardworking, etc. What stopped those people from delivering? And I'm sure many of them are asking this question as well. Now, to answer this question, where it had gone wrong is on the issue of the economy. You see, the ANC has made an agreement, this is public information, they've made an agreement with that 1%. That says that we will take political power and we will leave the economic power in their hands for whatever reasons. And they've managed to successfully convince the ANC voters and supporters that this can be done, that you can separate political and economic power in a country. And this is impossible. If the person with the economic power will dominate the politics, political funding, influence, etc. And this is the problem. And what we are saying is, if we want the country to change, that is one of the issues that now needs to be addressed now. That we have to say that this was a mistake. It was a mistake to try and say, let's leave the economic power there. And we now have to address that. And this is where Azania's focus is. We're saying, no, don't go promise lands, houses. We have to go see what was the mistake that was made. And again, I reiterate, a mistake that was made by the leadership of the ANC. The ANC rank and file and the activists, unfortunately, they were convinced wrongfully about this approach to take. And I'm sure they're regretting it now, like all of us.
No, you said something very important. I mean, we know this the world over. I mean, in America, they call it lobbying. They use a lovely term for it. But the political heads of most countries in the world, in fact, all countries in the world, has the strong business, economic backing, right? There's these lobbyists, businessmen that fund these political. Now, we see this here, right? I mean, you're going into an election with, I think, ballot paper that will probably be like a whole book.
Yeah, possibly.
Because there's so many political parties. But if you double-click behind these political parties, you're starting to see who are the influencers behind these political, who are the funders. I mean, now we, at least in South Africa, we have this that allows us to see who's actually behind. It's open, it's transparent. Now you've seen very influential people that have perhaps agendas that are protecting the 1%. And how do we address that?
No, that is 100%. What South African people must realize is that most of the political parties and candidates in the country are financed by a small clique of these business people. And these business people, or the business power in South Africa, is not an individual separate power. If you want to truly understand it, you have to go look at the interlocking relationships, directorships, shareholding, associations, etc. And then you will realize that all of these people are actually one interest group. And now they have 10, 20 people on the ballot that they are funding, while the South African people can only elect one. And they, of course, they have a definite goal. There are some of those goals we can discuss more in detail, but one of the goals is for them to maintain their economic dominance over the country. And if they continue to dominate the country economically and financially, there's no political power that can go beyond that. Like, for example, now recently we've discovered that the commercial banks have admitted to rand manipulation. So with this rand manipulation that they've done, because they've got such power, in the CODESA arrangement that was made in 1994, what I was alluding to, the banks were left with that power that they had during apartheid times. The ANC decided for them to keep it. And they have such power that they can manipulate the rand when a president wants to pick a certain finance minister. When the president criticizes certain things that are happening, they can make the rand go down. And this has led to the toppling of at least one president in the country. So this is the kind of power that I'm talking about. And I don't think, from Azania's point of view, we feel that it is not right. We cannot have a democracy and a free country where there is such unaccountable power. Because nobody elects these guys. Nobody can sit down and question these guys and say, no, we don't like what you are doing. This is free, this is private monopoly capital, as you say, that they have in their hands to do whatever they want to. And they have literally the power to topple governments. And for as long as we ignore that and we allow that to happen, we can never have freedom and proper change in South Africa.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about rand manipulation, and I mean, I quite recently there's whole issue with this Lady R and the Ukraine issue, and you heard there was an expose from, I think, the U.S. ambassador that was here, and then nothing came of it, and we taking a stance for you know, with the Russians, just had our rand actually go into free fall.
Yes.
And that's where you can see that directly happening, right? The rand manipulation.
Yes.
And I mean, with what's currently happening, you can hear this as well, that you'll have a minister of international relations, you know, very truthfully stand in solidarity with the Palestinians, and then you have a president and it has to then toe the line a little bit because now the big economic powers are now pulling the strings.
100%. I mean, the government is held ransom by private financial and economic power. In South Africa, if the government wants to build a road, it has to raise taxes or it has to get loans. Both taxes and loans are not in the control of the government. Taxes depends on how much tax these big corporations are willing to pay. You know, if they don't use their lawyers to evade tax and lobby for certain laws so that they don't pay enough tax and all of that. And secondly, the loans that the government, so they are responsible for job creation, company tax, etc. The government has to wait and see how they decide the economy is going to deliver enough tax for the government to do its job or not. The government has no control over that. It's private. Secondly, the loans. The government gets the loans through the South African Reserve Bank network of commercial banks, locally and internationally. These banks can decide without any restriction whether they want to give a loan, what's the interest on the loan, etc. And like now, you know, I believe there's a concerted effort to bring the South African government to financial crisis with the grey listing. So with grey listing now, that, like I say, two ways of financing the government, loans and taxes. Grey listing makes sure that the loan availability to the government shrinks and the cost of the loans go up. And so this is all held privately. And this is how the government can be squeezed.
Oh, that's quite scary, actually, my brother. And, you know, we listening to this here as sometimes naive, you know, being flirted by with all these different political parties. It's just such an awakening. We've come to the end of this segment. Let's explore further after the break. Welcome back to Inspirate Business. And here we are being enlightened on economics, on politics, on social issues in our country, in the world. Now, brother Ricardo, what you were saying before the break is chilling, actually. You know, we're so naive, myself included, you know, that you go into, you listen to all these political parties, all sloganing and, you know, talking of land and all the nice things that we want to hear. But there seems to be this, you know, call it for what it is, an evil force in the world. An evil, you know, falsehood that is duping us. You know, so you go and put a cross on a ballot box thinking this is for the betterment of yourself, for your children, for your future. And you could be handing over, you know, your civil liberties, your rights to this dark forces that don't have your interest at heart, that are just interested in their own gain.
Yeah.
And how do we, can it be changed? I mean, I know the work that you're doing is attempting to do so, but are we saying you're in the minority and it's this mountain and it's too powerful to control, to overcome?
No, I don't think it's a mountain. It's a mountain, but it is a flimsy mountain. It's a mountain made out of lies. So it's one of those mountains that if you are at a distance from it, it looks big, powerful. But if you actually have the courage to get closer and push it, you will realize it's paper, because it's made out of lies. And it's not necessarily that the people are naive, we are dealing with psychopaths. And the average person is not a psychopath. So, for example, you would not say to someone, hey, come with me around the corner. I want to show you something, and smile at him. And obviously, he's going to read that as goodness. And when he's coming around the corner, you kill him or you stab him or what. The majority of people don't think like this. The majority of people don't operate like this. And therefore, the majority of people are always vulnerable to people who are like that. And at the moment, you have the world, South Africa included, that's dominated by such people. By such people, as you mentioned, with the mining. I was in Kimberley recently. So Kimberley has the amount of diamonds that was taken out of Kimberley to produce wealth all around the world is unbelievable. But the poverty in Kimberley is shocking. So imagine the kind of person that can extract a diamond here and move that diamond on aeroplanes or whatever out of Kimberley through the waves of poor, hungry, desperate people and not even give them a cent. That is psychopathic mind. And this is the kind of mind that runs. So it's not that the people are naive, is the people are good. And good people are vulnerable to psychopaths until they realize who they're dealing with. When they realize who they're dealing with, then they have a better chance to deal with them. And the second issue is, of course, the media, mainstream media, the education system, and all of that is all geared to hide some of the truth that I'm telling you now. So this is purely just kept from the people. And unless you have an information source that is outside of the system's control, this is all that you know. And you can't blame people if this is all that they know, and if they are too good-hearted to expect that there will be evil people conspiring against them. And so that's the situation. I don't blame them. I don't think it is an insurmountable task. I think good people, if they are warned, if they are shown, they can defend themselves against this evil.
I think that's shown to us by the Palestinian resistance. I mean, who would have thought that powerhouse funded with trillions by this whole, Western capital would be challenged like they have by young boys. So, yeah, you're right. With the truth on your side, and Allah says that to us in the Quran, that as long as you're on the side of truth and justice, He will always be on the side of those that are in need of that help.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're right. It can be toppled, but the thing is, how do we go about doing it, and what are the strategies from an Azania perspective?
We need a revolution. We need a revolution. We are dealing here with an unaccountable. So we're dealing with a government above a government. But the one government we elect, like people elected the ANC last time, but the ANC, like I've explained to you, the ANC is at the mercy of this government on top of it that controls the finances of the country, without which the ANC can't do anything. That can have the money to infiltrate the ANC.
And this is linked to international global finance.
It's international. It's international. The world is operating. There is one clique. There is one clique that dominates the entire world. And much of that clique's power, I would put it to you this way, that the state of Israel has a great deal to play in terms of this power structures. And the state of Israel is a key role player and is at the center of this. Because look how the world is on its knees in front of Israel. Israel is the only country that can do whatever it wants when it comes to international law. It can break it. It can murder people and genocide them in broad daylight like this. No one else can. You must remember, Russia is a much bigger country than Israel, as we know, but obviously I have my views. I think that Israel is much bigger than Russia, but Russia is a much bigger country, as people know. Vladimir Putin, the president, was issued an arrest warrant from the ICC. Netanyahu hasn't been. It shows the amount of power that they have. So we are dealing here with an international clique. South Africa is at the center of that. We've got a clique here that connects with the other cliques. And they are steering the world in a certain direction, exploiting economies, exploiting people. And Israel is an apple of their eye for some reason or the other. They're propping Israel up. It's an unnatural country. It cannot sustain itself internally. The United States government has to pour billions into Israel. The UK has to give billions to Israel. South Africa has to give billions to Israel. Everybody gives billions to Israel. And this is part of the power that they have. So how do we overcome them? They are unelected. They are illegitimate. And we have every right to encourage a peaceful revolution against them. And this is what I'm encouraging in South Africa. It's not enough for us to seek to win an election. We need to seek to get control of our rand again. We need to get control of our economy. We have to make sure that any power that can move the entire country here must be accounted for. It must be elected. It must be discussed. We can't have any more hidden and secret powers in the country. And that is why Azania is calling for a peaceful revolution to topple this power. And just to give you an idea, this power is connected, to talk bluntly about it, this power is connected to the Oppenheimer power and Oppenheimer finances in South Africa. You must remember, much of South Africa's gold and diamonds, etc., that Britain came here to conquer was handed over to the Oppenheimers. And from that enormous wealth sprung companies and institutions that you cannot imagine.
I believe even the Zionist movement's origins actually come out of the riches out of, like you said, Kimberley and our gold reserves, and then actually ended up buying assets in the UK and so on. So a lot of the wealth of Europe comes out of here through the Zionist movement. Yeah.
100%. I mean, Cecil John Rhodes played a big role. I believe there's a few American presidents that come from the Rhodes Scholarship, So South African wealth have always played a key role in dominating American politics, in dominating British politics, in dominating politics around the world. Today, we are supplying many of the resources all over. So yes, South Africa is a key place. If we want to change the world for the better, it starts here in South Africa. People around the world should know. They should encourage, they should support us and say, we hope that Ricardo and them can have their peaceful revolution in South Africa. But because what's the peaceful revolution? The peaceful revolution is to take the wealth and power out of these people's hands, because God chose to put the diamonds here under our soil, not under their soil. And I think much of their behavior is out of jealousy for our people. And so we need to encourage our people to say, look, you don't have a democracy. The government that you are voting for is powerless. The wealth that is in the ground, no one worked for it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put it there and put it under our soil. This has been confiscated from you. And therefore, you can't continue with this. If you vote another government in and they continue with the system as it is and it doesn't change, nothing meaningful will change in your life. And so we need a revolution, a peaceful revolution, to change the system fundamentally.
Yes, that gives us such a lot of hope. I mean, we have to change the trajectory of our country. I mean, I think if you go another 5 years, and our people have been extremely patient. You know, Allah talks about this in the Quran, that the two factors you need to have is patience and to have gratitude.
Yes.
And our people have demonstrated that. But, you know, you can't continue with being marginalized.
Yeah.
Because you will have a revolt.
Yeah.
You know, people cannot be duped, grossly injustices perpetrated against them forever. So after the break, we come to the last segment already. I want to bring it down to our South African situation immediately after the break. Welcome to Inspirate Business. And we have a very important, I believe, leader for South Africa. brother Ricardo Raaid Maarman, and an intriguing story hailing out of Graaff-Reinet in the Eastern Cape. This that he talks, this mishmash of a homestead of Anton Rupert on the one side and Robert Sobukwe on the other side, and the Dutch Reformers Church in Milan. What a mishmash. And here comes, birthed out of it, is a child of South Africa, who I believe is so critical in this next trajectory for our country. So let's take it down in a pragmatic level. You know, we in a very, very crucial time. You say in South Africa plays a crucial role globally.
Yes.
There's a lot of positives. We have a strong history with the likes of Mandela's,
Yes.
and the likes of Sisulus, and these were principled people. Yes, the ANC lost its way,
Yes.
as you say, influenced by global financial capital, pushes a certain agenda. We need to unshackle ourselves from that. But we have a lot of social issues.
Yeah.
Right? People are also looking at their own challenges, blackouts and joblessness, and things of like normal service delivery that doesn't happen. How do we overcome all of this here? And how are you as a Zania going to be doing this? Is it as a standalone, in collaboration? Is this about toppling the ANC? Is it about partnering with others? I mean, do you have like-minded entities? And how do you go about doing this?
Yeah. Look, as I said, with the ANC, as you quite rightly point out, people have worked hard and people have fought, and we should not undermine the sacrifices that was made by people. But we must also understand that our revolution is incomplete. The revolution that the ANC was striving for did not materialize as we wanted to. And the worst part of it is, yes, as you say, some gains were made. In my view, not enough. Strategically, we should have gone further. But now the worst part of it is we're seeing a reversal of that happening. And now, of course, people could argue various reasons why this is happening. In my mind, the reason why this is happening, like I've explained to you, there's a group of very wealthy psychopaths that are conspiring against the people of South Africa. And as you see, the things are being coordinated here. Food prices are going up systematically, and they are coordinated. It doesn't matter whether you go to Pick n Pay, Woolworths, or whatever, the prices are almost the same. I mean, this is a prima facie case of collusion between them. So this is not an accident. And then what you see happening as well, petrol prices go up as well. And then what you see as well, that load shedding happens, which causes job losses, which causes people to have less money. Now, there are too many things that are moving into one direction, which is the impoverishment of people, causing people to be exploited, etc. This is coordinated effort. It's happening across the economy. It's happening across the world that this is happening. So my view is, one is that we South African people must realize, if we want to get out of this, we must realize this is no accident. And we are not going to fully understand this if we deal with it in isolation, with the increase in the oil price only, or the increase in potatoes or whatever. We need to see that it can't be a coincidence, that every single one of these things point to one direction, poverty. It points to one direction, desperation. Points to one direction, that this country needs to be torn apart. And so the first realization that we have to come to is that there is a force, which I call a subversive force, that is actively undermining the country.
And this is the book that you, it's called the
Subversion of South Africa.
Right, okay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So this is where I've got evidence of this. I explain how it is done, etc. But this is where the politics come from. So from Azania's point of view, we are saying, please, we're willing to work with anyone on this issue, that South Africa is not failing, it's not falling apart, it's being subverted, it's being sabotaged. Once we can agree on that, now let's identify who is the saboteur. And once we identify who that is, now let's identify how do they do this? How do they have the power to sabotage a big country like this? So this is the first question. that we have to answer. And I'm saying for those people who agree with me, the country is being sabotaged. We are being subverted. And the people who are sabotaging and subverting us, they are more powerful than the government. They are unelected, they are illegitimate, and we need to revolt against them. We need to have a revolution against them. Peaceful revolution, because this is our country, and we do not have to fight and shoot guns to get our country back. We are saying a legitimate claim. You have stolen our country. You've gotten power in our country through immoral and illegitimate means, and give it back. And we have every right to peacefully demand that. And of course, a real change in a country can only really come when there's an underpinning of peace. Yes, there can be wars and fighting at different stages, etc. But there must be a realization peacefully in the minds and the hearts of people. And that's where the revolution starts. That's where this change starts. For as long as South Africans believe and think any other purposes, the country is falling apart because of incompetence, because there's a black government, because the ANC doesn't know how to govern. Because of any of these reasons, I'm afraid we are not going to get where we want to. Because you must remember, first, we thought in this country that if the National Party government and apartheid is removed, everything will be fine. But there were people like Sobukwe and others that says, no, there are powers behind the National Party government. The National Party government is a puppet. If you don't deal with that, nothing's going to change. And I'm saying the same now. If you do not deal with the powers behind the ANC, you can replace the ANC with whatever you like. If our nation is not focused on the real power behind the scenes, nothing will change. And in fact, as we see around the world, it will get worse. You know, these food prices that I was talking about here, it's global. In the UK, everywhere, it's happening.
So the fight here, this peaceful revolution that you talk about, is to unshackle us from the control of this falsehood, this evil force that you talk about, right? This hidden force that is controlling whichever political party comes in. And once, and only once you can do that, is where you can then build on the, and we have the riches in this country. Because what I'm hearing you saying is that there's a false narrative that we actually are impoverished and we won't be able to solve our problems.
No, definitely, this is a false narrative. You know, South Africa is the richest country in the world. Our mineral resources power the factories in China, power the factories in America, power the factories in Europe. It's our natural resources that does this. And in China, you've had how much? They say hundreds of millions of people pulled out of poverty. It would not have been possible with our resources, without our resources. The development that they have in America would not be possible. There are natural resources that you find in South Africa that you do not find anywhere else in the world. That is necessary for almost every industry in the world. Now, if our natural resources can lift people out of poverty and make people live unbelievable high living standards, billions of people. Now imagine if that can be used, just a fraction of it, for 60 million people. The 60 million people's lives can be improved. And my view is that there is a problem if there is train loads of our natural resources that are being shipped out of the country, leaving our people in poverty, that our political leaders do nothing to stop this, that our university professors or whatever doesn't teach that this is wrong, that the media is not putting a spotlight on this. This is wrong. And this is part of the revolution, that we have to stop this fundamental malfunctioning of our country, and our people will live better. Like I said to you, if just a fraction of the steel and the diamonds and manganese and everything that is being shipped out of this country can be used to develop our country, we would probably be the most developed country in the world. And for our people to live in poverty under such circumstances is a crime. And I'm saying that this crime will not change until we realize there are people who are planning this poverty, who are strategizing it, who are implementing certain tactics to ensure that our people stay this way. And if we do not realize that, if we're thinking we are just operating in a vacuum, nothing will change.
Wow, my brother, this has given us much food for thought. We've come to the end of the show. There's a few seconds left. Some parting words of inspiration to the viewers out there, those that are gonna have to make their cross very soon, going away now on the holidays, but when we come into the new year 2024, this is a momentous occasion in our trajectory. We could be losing our country. What are some of the parting words?
And I would say that, obviously this is a critical moment in history, but we've been blessed to be in this critical moment in history. This is what life is all about, so that we can play a part in where this country goes. And I believe God has prepared us, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has prepared us through our difficulty and struggling to get to this point. And if we, have hope, if we stick to the truth, and if we have the courage to look falsehood and evil in the eye, then I'm very confident we can overcome it, 100%.
Inshallah,
Ameen, ameen, ameen.
On behalf of the Inspirate Business Show, it has been an absolute pleasure to have you, brother. You are really speaking haq and the truth. And as brother Raaid has mentioned, this is about truth versus falsehood. We've seen it unfolding in Palestine.
Yes.
And that has been a mirror for us, the rest of the world. And I think it's awakened the truth that has been hidden, and people are now standing up for it.
Yes.
We may be in a minority, but it's galvanizing. And as Brother Raaid said, and as shown to us by our beloved Prophet, as espoused in the Quran, is that truth will always overcome falsehood.
Ameen. Definitely.
On that note, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.